Chapter 3. Create a manifesto. You will face forks in the road where you must deliberate between following through or giving up. Instead of having to make the hard decision and reach deep into your willpower tool bag every single time, having rules for yourself can help you decide which direction to take whenever you reach the fork. We've been told since we were young that we have to follow rules. Well, this time we can choose our own rules that will ultimately help us accomplish exactly what we want. Rules can generally be called mental models, which can be critical to follow through. This is because they create a set way that you have to make every decision, no exceptions. With your decisions already made for you by your rules, you thus make decisions automatically and you no longer have room to make the wrong decision based on waning willpower and self-discipline, which is to give up. Rules hold you accountable so that you are not winging it every day but instead are guided. Use your rules to guide your worldview and your daily actions. Let them make every decision for you. A good example of a rule is to always complete 2 tasks on your to-do list for your goal every day. It's simply unacceptable to not do this. You have to complete the steps no matter what. As a result, you'll find that you make progress toward your goal even when you don't want to. The choice was out of your hands. Deciding to work each day is not your decision to make. It has already been made for you by your rule, and thus you have no choice but to do it. Consider an example of when John, a writer, doesn't use the rule of always completing 2 steps on his to-do list. In the morning, he is excited and thinks, after work, I will go home and start writing my novel. I will write 2 chapters. Then he goes to work and grows fatigued and loses his inspiration slowly but surely throughout the day. By the time he gets home, all he wants to do is watch Gossip Girl. So since he does not have this rule in place, he fails to write. He has made 0 progress and is far from his goal. The sense of guilt that plagues him is horrible. As he goes to bed, he vows to himself that he will make up for the lost progress by writing 4 chapters tomorrow. What do you think will happen then? He comes home tired and defeated again. He lets the fact that work drains him become his excuse for not writing. Moreover, since he faces the monumental task of writing 4 chapters today, it feels impossible to start on. If he didn't have energy for 2 chapters the night before, he certainly won't have the energy for 4 chapters tonight. He gets overwhelmed and doesn't write at all. It seems as if he will never finish this novel because he always finds some excuse to let himself off of the hook from actually writing. He gave himself too much choice and leeway and thus allowed self-sabotage all too easily. Now let's consider if John applied the rule every day, which is black and white and doesn't care about fatigue. No matter how tired and uninspired he feels, he knows that he has to write 2 chapters a night after work, no exceptions and no excuses. So when he gets home, he looks at his computer and he feels tempted to just go watch TV and conserve his energy by being lazy. But because he follows a rule in his life, he can't break it and so he has to write. In fact, he plans for it all day because he knows it's coming. He sits down and tackles the 2 chapters and goes to bed exhausted but contented and proud of himself. He has made significant progress on his novel. Pretty soon, he is done with his novel and the feeling of accomplishment is worth the energy he had to spend on the novel when he was drained after work. Rules help you follow through because they limit your vision. When you are robbed of your decision-making power, the same power that leads you to fiddle with social media when important tasks need to be done, then your hands are tied and following through is the only choice you have. This chapter is about creating a set of rules, collectively a manifesto, for you to follow every time you come across a fork in the road. They push and guide you into the right direction and avoid depleting the willpower you do have. Here are a few ideas for you. Rule 1. Evaluate yourself. Rule 1 is to ask yourself, if not for laziness or fear, would I be giving up? This makes it very clear to yourself that you are not acting out of a lack of ability or talent, but rather you are just taking the easy way out. Is that what you want to admit to yourself? When you face the fact that you are being lazy or fearful head-on, it makes you not want to be that way anymore. It's the kick in the butt that forces you to call yourself lazy/fearful and then drives you to take action. Realizing that only fear or laziness stands in your way helps you realize how silly that is so you get over it. So before you give up, make it a rule that you always ask yourself if it is laziness or fear that is holding you back from action. Let's say that you have a goal to make a certain amount of money by delivering so many projects to your clients in a month. But the work is hard and you find yourself losing motivation. You want to stop working and take several days off. Ask yourself, am I just being lazy? That kicks your butt into gear and you take action. You do your work and you feel better about yourself knowing that you are doing the best you can. Rule 2, 3 tasks maximum. Rule 2 is to focus on 3 things a day maximum. Only. Tops. Being overwhelmed or disorganized can kill your ability to get things done. Sometimes we can't follow through on what we want because we don't plan smartly. We give ourselves too much to do and we become overwhelmed. But using this rule enables you to plan against that problem by only allowing yourself to focus on 3 things a day maximum. Plan how to reduce your focus to only 3 things by deciding on what they are going to be the night before. Prepare to focus only on those things so that you can plan logically and not react emotionally. One setback you'll face when you attempt to limit yourself to 3 main tasks a day is differentiation. Specifically, you will need to learn to differentiate between important things and urgent things. Important things must be done and should make it to your top 3, while urgent things are not necessary. Urgent things will seem important and will cause you stress, but they may not actually be important or take priority. An urgent thing might be making time for a harried client who is rushing you. Meanwhile, getting a project to a client before the deadline is an example of an important task. Everything on your agenda will appear important and urgent, so you must determine which is which and plan accordingly. Similarly, differentiate between useless motion that looks busy but gets nothing done and actual action, which is movement toward what you want. Useless motion is shifting papers around your desk, while actual action is using those papers to get work done and make progress on a project. Make what really matters the priority. How might you use this rule is to set an agenda for yourself. Suppose you have 5 tasks to do for your business. 2 of the tasks are not really important and only appear to be since they are urgent, so you decide to focus on them later. You pick 3 tasks to focus on, and you evaluate which one is most important so that you can focus on that first. The night before, look at those 3 items on your to-do list and determine what steps you will take in actual action to complete those items, starting with the most important one. The next day, take that actual action for your first task, then your second, then your third. Only complete one task at a time and do not multitask. By the close of the workday, you just completed 3 major tasks at a realistic pace. Rule 3. Create limitations and requirements. Rule 3 is to make actual rules for yourself. Create an actual code of conduct for you to follow in terms of being more disciplined and following through more. Write your code down in detail and then post it in a visible area. While you may not adhere to all of them every day, you at least stand a better chance of follow-through when you actually take the time to think about your code of conduct and write them down. The rules should focus on creating either limitations or requirements for what you do each day so that you actually take initiative and get tasks done. This rule forces you to determine what you really need and want and analyze what you hope to achieve. Basically, you are stopping to check yourself and evaluate how you are progressing toward your ultimate goal. It helps you focus more on your intentions and clarify them, making them an integral part of your work ethic. So when you set out to accomplish something, you have a rule in place to make yourself follow through on the project. Give yourself 5 daily limitations and 5 daily requirements. Make clear statements about what you cannot do and what you must do. Limitations are relatively easy to understand. They limit distraction and temptation. As for requirements, understand that you are not Superman or Superwoman, so you can't overload yourself. Instead, work smarter and have 5 requirements that you can reasonably meet. You may not always adhere to this rule, but you at least have some guidance for yourself. In addition, you gain some clarity about what you have cut out for you each day. An example is to set a limitation that you will not watch more than 1 hour of TV a day, you will not spend more than an hour on Facebook, and you will not take longer than a 1-hour lunch break. Meanwhile, your requirements are that you must read at least 30 pages a day, you must complete at least 4 hours of work before lunch, and you must complete 8 hours of work total by the time you sign out or clock out of work. Rule 4. Reaffirm your intentions. Rule 4 is quite similar to Rule 1. This rule comes into play when you are faced with a fork in the road between deciding to follow through or not. This rule seeks to reaffirm your intentions by reminding yourself what they are and why you want to achieve them. When you find yourself deliberating between quitting and following through, ask these 3 questions to yourself. Better yet, have the answers written somewhere so you can look over again. I want. This is where you state your end goal and how you will benefit from it. What is your reason and motivation? Keep reminding yourself of the external or internal motivators that you have on your side. Remind yourself something like, I want to be rich. I will. This is where you state how you must reach that end goal and all the work you should be doing to get there. This statement brings your attention back to how necessary it is to complete what you are currently doing and how these tasks tie into the end goal. The journey is a necessary part of the goal. It helps for you to be very specific in this statement to see what actions you really do have to take. For example, tell yourself, if I want to be rich, I will need to finish this project and work hard on other projects. I won't. This is where you state what you shouldn't do because that action will impede your progress toward your end goal. There are many things detrimental to your progress, including distractions, temptations, lack of discipline, procrastination, and other destructive or wasteful actions. Tell yourself something like, if I want to be rich, I won't distract myself with social media and I won't prioritize social media over my work projects. Let's apply this concept to a potential real-life conundrum that you may encounter. As you work to complete a certification program necessary to get a pay raise at work, you find the volume of work overwhelming and you despise having so little free time on your hands. You contemplate giving up and saying whatever to the certification. After all, you have a job, so do you really need to advance yourself anymore? As you contemplate this, realize that this is the time when you should apply this rule because you have hit a fork in the road of follow-through. You choose to implement the rule and you state 3 things to yourself. I want to make more money at work and be able to afford a nicer home for myself and a future family. If I want to have more money and move into a better place, I will finish this certification program in order to get a raise at work. If I want to make more money at work and move into a better place, I won't let myself get discouraged and stop doing the work to complete this program or be thrown off track by simple temptations or laziness. You have just stated your intentions from beginning to end. As you may have noticed, a running theme in this book is that repetition helps follow through, and presence of mind is key. We may have the best intentions, but if we simply forget about them, then what good are they? When you face these questions constantly, your end goal and the steps you must take to reach, as well as the steps you must not take to reach it, it all becomes crystal clear. Rule 5. Think in terms of October 10th, 10. The next time you feel that you're about to give in to an urge or temptation, stop and ask yourself how you will feel 10 minutes, 10 hours, and 10 days from now. This rule may not seem all that powerful, but it's effective because it forces you to think about your future self and to see how your actions are going to affect yourself in the future, for better or worse. A lot of times, we may know that we are losing willpower or doing something harmful in the moment, but that's not enough to stop us from doing it because we don't have any connection to our future self that will have to deal with the consequences. This rule quickly creates that connection, and that can make the difference between a success or failure of discipline. Why time intervals of 10 minutes, hours, and days? Because that helps you realize how short-term the pleasure or comfort of a discipline is relative to its long-term consequences. At 10 minutes, you might be feeling good, with perhaps just the initial bit of shame creeping in. After 10 hours, you'll feel mostly shame or regret. 10 days later, you might be consumed by regret having realized some of the negative consequences that your decision or action has had on your pursuit of your long-term goals. On the other hand, you might apply this rule and realize that a lapse in following through now won't make a difference 10 days into the future. If that's the case, then you can indulge a bit without guilt or shame. For example, imagine that you apply this rule when deciding whether or not to skip a workout to go to dinner with coworkers. If you've just begun exercising and haven't built it into a consistent habit yet, your decision to skip a single workout might increase the odds of skipping future workouts or stopping working out altogether. How will you feel in 10 minutes, hours, and days? 10 minutes, good, with a slight tinge of regret, as you can still taste the lasagna or ice cream. The pleasure is still tangible. 10 hours, almost entirely regret, as the pleasure is gone and fleeting, and your diet has been soundly broken. 10 days, 100% regret, because the broken discipline is now completely meaningless and but a faint memory. The lasagna does not have a lasting benefit, but it does have a lasting cost. On the other hand, if exercising is already a consistent and enjoyable habit for you, then imagining how you'll feel 10 days from now will quickly show you that one skipped workout isn't harmful to your long-term discipline or goals. And when you're not swayed by this rule or your dilemma of willpower is extra difficult, you can add a final question for yourself. That is, how will breaking willpower now affect you in 10 weeks or even longer term? You might want to change the parameters to 10 weeks if you're mostly engaged in longer-term decisions and tasks. In this process, it's crucial to be honest with yourself and wary of your own abilities to rationalize and make excuses. For example, you may have tried to quit an addictive habit many times in the past, only to fail and eventually reinforce the harmful behavior. If you have a history of falling into bad habits after a single lapse in discipline, then an honest assessment of how you would feel after 10 days or 10 weeks will tell you that you simply can't afford a lapse in discipline now if you're going to achieve your long-term goals. It wasn't an exception or justified in that one circumstance, it is a reflection of your character for better or worse. Without that honesty and ability to see your own rationalizing and excuses for what they are, applying this rule may be a futile exercise. Rule 6. Just 10 minutes. The final rule is simple, easy, and powerful. If you want something negative, harmful, or detrimental to your follow-through, wait at least 10 minutes before getting it. It's simple and leaves no room for debate or excuses. When you feel an urge, force yourself to wait for 10 minutes before giving in to whatever the urge is. If you're still craving it after 10 minutes, then have it. Or wait 10 more minutes because you've already done it and survived just fine. Simply by choosing to wait, you remove the immediate from immediate gratification, building discipline and improving decision-making. Similarly, if you want to quit something beneficial, wait just 10 more minutes. It's the same thought process applied in a different way. 10 minutes is nothing, so you can wait or continue that long easily. Then, if you do it once, it's easy to repeat, isn't it? In other words, say to yourself just 10 minutes more of willpower each time you reach a fork in the road. Another benefit of this rule is the purposeful escalation of good habits. If you've forced yourself to do something productive for 10 minutes, you might end up doing it for 15 or even 20 minutes more. Next time, your tolerance will build such that you're more immune to temptation and distraction. The following time you might continue for an extra 6 or 7 minutes. Every time you feel distracted, just exercise willpower for a few minutes longer, and you'll steadily follow through better with each escalation. At some iteration of just 10 minutes more, you'll reach a point of momentum, and that's often enough to carry you for hours. Takeaways. A manifesto is nothing more than a set of rules to follow every day. We might hate rules, but rules take the guesswork out of our days and give us guidelines to follow. They make matters black and white, which is helpful to following through because there is simply no other choice. Rule 1. Are you acting out of laziness? If so, is this a characterization you want about yourself? Rule 2. 3 major tasks a day, maximum. Differentiate between important tasks, urgent tasks, and simple wasted motion. Rule 3. Create daily limitations and requirements for yourself. These keep you within the bounds of what you know you need to do. These are also the building blocks of good habits. Rule 4. Sometimes we lose sight of what we want to accomplish. Thus, reaffirm your intentions by stating I want, I will, and I won't statements. Rule 5. Try to look into the future, 10 minutes, hours, and days at a time. Do you like what you see when you consider not following through? Is it worth the benefit to the current self at the expense of the future self? Probably not. Rule 6. It's just 10 minutes, right? So if you want to quit, it's just 10 minutes. And if you need to wait, it's just 10 minutes.